Hi everybody and welcome to the One Wildlife podcast with me, Abbie Barnes. This is simply a show about life, and as such there are no boundaries to where our conversations can take us. Along the way, we simply aim to inspire, empower, educate and uplift, exploring how we can all live our best lives every single day. Before we get started, I want to mention that this podcast is hosted by Spend More Time in the Wild, which I founded in 2016 to help individuals get outside for the benefit of mental and physical health. Over the last few years, the project has grown into a worldwide community of passionate and courageous individuals working together to enjoy the beauty of our wild spaces and protect them for generations to come. You can find out more about both the podcast and Wild by visiting www.spendmoretimeinthewild.co.uk. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening, or head on to YouTube to watch the full episode. Joe Williams is the Business Development Manager for Cicerone, which for over 50 years has been one of the very best publishers of outdoor guides to exploring the hills, mountains and countryside of Britain, Europe and the world. Naturally, Joe's passion for the outdoors has threaded into his everyday life. He is an enthusiastic all-rounder in the mountains and seeks to pursue a wide array of outdoor activities that allow access to more remote and inspiring landscapes. His main skill, though, is endurance mountain ultra running, which he discovered after many years of climbing and road running. He tackled his first mountain race in France in 2014, and since then has competed in running events across various mountainous regions of the planet. When he's not out and about on his feet, Joe is a keen classical guitarist with a background in performance and teaching. He lives in Kendal with his partner Caroline, his pup Tryfan, and today we get to meet Joe in person to hear all about his life both on and off the mountains. So Joe, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Abbie. Appreciate it.
How are we doing today?
Well, pretty good. I've had the morning run, and so yeah, feeling fresh and ready to go.
Fresh and ready. How far did you do this morning?
Well, pretty short actually. Just in fact, probably one of the shortest runs in a long time. Just a 40-minute loop above Kendal with Caroline and aforementioned Tryfan. Yeah, just sort of getting Tryfan used to a bit more running with us. So she's sort of quite a young dog.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, it's funny actually, for listeners who are interested, Joe and I bumped into each other on Bow Fell earlier this year, and it was, are you Joe? Are you Abbie? And it's like, yes. And of all places to meet, hey, that was a good time.
Yeah, it was funny. It's always funny who you bump into on the hill, and I guess it also sort of speaks to the, we're not that large a community. So you end up, seeing people that you know or that you might recognise online, and that's quite nice. Yeah, we had a little chat, didn't we? And then we continued our separate ways. And it wasn't a good walk for Tryfan, actually. She, despite being a border collie, who's they're meant to have good endurance and all that sort of thing, she decided that she needed a nap on the way down. So we had to stop for half an hour, which was a bit embarrassing, really. All the sheep were looking on and judging us.
Sheep judgment is real.
It is those Herdwicks.
That's it. Oh geez, beautiful sheep though. But no, it's lovely that you guys are getting out and that she's building up her endurance as well. But we'll come to the running in a moment. I just want to go right back, because you have grown up in a very outdoorsy family, and I just wondered if you could share a little bit about sort of what that looked like for you and where you think that passion for being out in the natural world started.
Yeah, definitely a very outdoorsy family. I mean, walking in the Lake District from, I don't know, like the age of, I guess, from when I was able to walk, sort of 3 or 4 or something like that. I don't know. This led to every single family holiday was quite a lot of outdoorsy families. It's always going camping somewhere. Walking was always involved. When it got to the age of sort of 10 or so that started adding in climbing into it. Yeah, I mean, I started climbing when I was 10, and with an indoor climbing wall opening up near where we lived, and that also kind of coincided with a trip, a family holiday in Switzerland in the Alps, where I seem to remember that my parents had a couple of pairs of ancient crampons and sort of ice axes with wooden shafts and things like that. And these were like really hallowed items and materials to me, and I was promised that at the end of the trip we'd be able to go up an alpine peak, and we did the full works. My dad and I, we hired a guide from the little town of Arolla, went up to the mountain hut in the afternoon, spent the night there eating around the table with all the other climbers, and then very early morning starting before sunrise, head torches on across the glacier, and we victoriously reached our peak, Point de Vuasson, which I think is the incredibly humble height of like 3,200 meters or something, sort of really unimpressive. And I think I found it incredibly hard, but it's the kind of thing that you come back and then you do like a school presentation on what you've been up to in the summer, and showing off these ancient crampons, and that, I would say, that sort of kindled the love for the bigger mountains, and it's more the climbing side rather than running that I ended up concentrating on for most of my teens and most of the 20s as well, really.
So what is it that the mountains offer you then? I mean, having grown up in and around them, I think I can understand how easily they become your natural landscape, but the fact that you take the initiative to go out and explore new places, not just across the UK, but across the world, what is it that speaks to you about them?
Yeah, I think for me, it's really easy to know how I feel about mountains when I'm without them, shall we say.
Yeah.
There was you mentioned that I was spent a while as a classical guitarist, teaching and performing, and during that time my I suppose mentor and teacher on the guitar side was in Poznan in Poland. And Poznan it's got a river, yeah, but it's pan flat. It's hundreds of miles from the sea. There's not a hill in sight. And it's when you're in an environment like that you know where your heart is, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't know, things just sort of feel right. I suppose we all know the feeling of when you're, if I guess for those listeners that are in the UK, if you're heading to the Lake District from further in the south of England, you're driving up the M6 or taking the train, and you can look out the window, and there you can see the hills starting to appear, and the excitement that starts giving you. And the same goes for when you're off to Chamonix or something like that. There's the flight to Geneva or the train there, and you start winding your way through the valley, and then you catch your first sight of Mont Blanc, and I don't know, it's incredible excitement. So it's sort of, when you're without it, that's what's most important. But then I think another part is once you've done something like I don't know, walked up Ben Nevis or done the West Highland Way, you've seen that valley, but there's the question in your mind of, well, what does the next valley over look like, and what about that hill over there, and this sort of urge to start filling in the blanks in your sort of mental map and piecing it together. Scotland's amazing for that, because it's just the entire country's covered in mountains, and always want to see what that next hill or that next valley is like.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to a lot of that. And even as you're talking about, going into Chamonix or driving up to the Lake District, it's like, oh, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling the excitement. It's yeah,
Yeah,
it's amazing. Mm.
I'm getting excited already just talking
I
about it.
know. When are we going? Well, you're already up there. I'm on the edge of Exmoor, so I've got a bit of a drive, but
Hey, Exmoor's very nice as well.
Exmoor's all right. It's a little bit more placid, but the coast is nice and rugged. But anyway, yes. So I'd love to sort of dive in a little bit with your running then. So you have that mountaineering background, obviously spending that time in the mountain. It's one thing to push yourself up a hill at walking pace. It's another to then be in the hills at running pace. Talk us through the running mindset that you ended up adopting and how you found yourself running this first race in France in 2014.
Yeah, I guess there's a bunch of ways to come at this answer. So I'll try and remember a few that are applicable to me. Um, for years, when climbing, particularly with a great friend of mine called Tanya Noakes, she's a mountain guide in Chamonix. We would do routes together. Quite often in the US in the Rockies. Maybe it would have like 10 miles of walking to get to the start of the climb, and then we'd do the route as sort of quickly and efficiently as possible, and then inevitably just jog down the other side. Heavy rucksacks for the rope and climbing gear, but I never really thought of it as running. It just felt like the best way to get back to the car and back to the burgers and the beers a bit more quickly. Yeah, so that never felt like it was running to me particularly. So that's I guess one origin. Another is a family connection with my uncle, who for years, when I guess I would have been in my late teens and 20s, he'd come around for a family barbecue or something like that, and we'd hear that he was in training for 100-kilometer and 80-mile and 100-mile races, and in the mountains. And at that time, probably for most people as well, it seemed completely baffling, and I don't know, just so far out of comprehension, to really understand at all what that sort of thing was about. But I mean, like many people, I sort of was curious to run a marathon. I ended up doing my first road marathon in 2009. And it was an abysmal experience. Probably that many people have that sort of thing, that training had been okay, get to sort of mile 17 and 18, and then things get incredibly hard. And and I sort of got through to the end all right, but I was mentally battered by the experience, and it was several years before I felt like like I was capable of facing that sort of pain again, really. But then I did another one and did another one, and then sort of started feeling I was getting the hang of that. But I'd become a bit more aware of the mountain and ultra running side of things when I did that first marathon in 2009. I read a book. I read a couple. I read a couple of books that are now considered quite pivotal in this sort of new generation of trail and ultramarathon running. They were books called Born to Run, and let's see what else. Scott Jurek's book. And An Ultramarathon Man by Dean Karnazes. Yeah. And these, I'd recommend anyone to have a look at these books, whether you're a runner or not, because they're pretty interesting. But reading these books, like Dean's Ultramarathon Man, he he described training for and racing Western States in it was a 100-mile race in California, and there were stories. It was things like he was puking all the time, and he wasn't able to run anymore. Had to just sort of walk it out, and later in the race, he appears to go blind, and I have to say, I just thought it sounded like the coolest thing ever.
This is why runners are a different breed.
I suppose so. So I think maybe I don't have much. I don't know necessarily much physical talent for running, but I'm definitely motivated, and I suppose that's a thing that's hard to form or hard to train. You either love it or you don't love it. So reading those books, and learning about UTMB, and then realizing that actually I had run in the mountains before. I just never called it running in the mountains. It all led to the realization that I should probably try a mountain running race and see how that went. I did a race called, I forget what it was called actually, but it was in France, in Provence, up Mont Ventoux, actually, the famous Tour de France mountain climb. But this was a running race that went up it and down it and then looped around for 58 kilometers, I think it was. And I really enjoyed it, and it went quite well. I seem to remember finishing, I don't know, something like 10th or something like that, and thinking, hang on a minute, where did that come from? And that was it, really.
Yeah, no, I find it absolutely fascinating. I have for a very long time been drawn into the fell running and the ultra scene. Particularly when I was younger, around 2014 to 16, it was a very heavy running time for me. But I don't live in the mountains. Let's be honest, it's hilly enough around here. But it's not the mountains, it's very different. And as somebody who loves the mountains, I often feel very conflicted when I'm there, because it's like, do you know what? I want to give this running thing a go. Let's see if I can do this. But then I love my hiking, and obviously followers who spend more time in the wild will know that, part of what I do is I film the hikes. But the fascination and the curiosity about this world of particularly ultra running in the mountains, it seems so lucrative, and you seem very humble, because you say, it's and perhaps not very good at it, but the fact that you can do it is quite incredible in itself. I think, as you say, for a lot of people, considering running 50, 100, 150k is like, wait, what? Come again? So I'd love to pick apart a little bit. How does somebody train for something like this? Before we hit record, you were just saying, you're off to Scotland to do 50 miles. And I'm like, all right, so is that 2 days? You're camping in between? Oh, no, just one go. So what do you have to eat? What do you have to take with you to see yourself through 50 plus miles in the mountains?
I'll touch on the training first, and then eating and drinking.
Yeah, I just always get drawn to the food,
Yeah, well, that's one of the perks, I think, as well. There's a saying in ultramarathon running that it's 50% physical, 90% mental, and that is quite true, because and then there's a really nice nice quote from the sort of the greatest fell runner of all time, Joss Naylor, who I guess I can give a sneak sort of insight that we're doing a book, Cicerone, with Joss Naylor, that's publishing in it's next month, actually. So that's really exciting. But one of Joss's lines is that I think it's a bit gory, I suppose, but it's overcome the weakness of the flesh with the strength of the mind. Or I'm probably paraphrasing, but it's something along those kind of lines. So there's a lot that you can, that I do believe that actually many people are very much capable of completing ultramarathon, whether it's a flatter, more runnable one or something in the mountains. It's sort of a question of mental preparedness. Obviously, you have to do the physical training, otherwise things are just going to go very wrong. But the mental, it's not necessarily mental strength, but it's more sort of mental techniques and ways of overcoming things that are difficult. And then for me, that links to how you actually do them. So being out for 10 hours, 15 hours, 40 hours, and I've not run anything longer than 41 hours or something, or whatever it is. But there are plenty of races that people are out there for 200 miles in the mountains, and that might be up to 100 hours, in some cases even longer. So the key there is really looking after yourself in the same way that you would look after yourself when you're on a hike. So I don't know, what do you do when you're on a hike and you start getting a hot spot in your shoes, and you think you might be getting a blister? You stop and you take care of it. When you're getting a bit hot, you either jump in a stream or put a sun hat on, and look after yourself there. When you start getting cold and it's raining and snowing, you put your warm layer on, jacket and your mitts. It's really common to see people in ultramarathon races in the mountains sort of not looking after themselves. And I guess because we think, I'm a runner, I should be able to sort of power on through this. But actually you're still in the mountains. You still need to take care and I guess sort of consider your own safety a bit, really. And inevitably when you end up doing that, you end up keeping going, and if you keep going long enough, then you get to the finish line, and that's sort of the other sort of sneaky trick really with ultra running, is that if you're, and it's a very obvious one, but you really need to minimize the amount of time that you're spent stood still or sat in an aid station, so that you're always making progress towards the finish line. The end always comes.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I wonder though, I mean, this you may or may not have an answer to this, but do you think perhaps the mental resilience, for lack of a better phrase, that you cultivate and forge when you're out in the mountains pushing through these hardships, that you carry it through into your day-to-day life? Or is it just a switch and you're runner Joe, and then you're Cicerone Joe, and then you're partner Joe, friend Joe? Or is it more rounded and running sort of brings them all together in that mental capacity?
I think that's an amazing question, and I do think that mental resilience is the right term. I think for it. I think for myself, it doesn't necessarily relate automatically. I think you need to work to apply those skills and capabilities that you've learned from a resilience standpoint into other parts of your life. I don't think for me it doesn't happen automatically, but there are amazing lessons there that can be applied if you pay attention to it. But I do like the idea of mental resilience, because it's obviously it's directly related to mental health, and I don't suffer from any significant mental health issues, but I do know that running and going out and doing long things in the mountains does help my mental health, and does help build resilience. That's one of the things I'm hoping on getting out of this 50-mile run in the Cairngorms this weekend is. It's not a race. It's not a recognized route. I don't have a time in mind. I'm doing it on my own. I've not got a tracker. I think I probably will try and keep my phone tucked away and stick on the map and compass as well. I just want to do it for my own benefit, really. I guess for the feelings of self-satisfaction, knowing that I can do that sort of thing, being independent and knowing that I can as I said before, sort of look after myself in the hills for all that kind of time. That feeling of confidence, I think, that you get from doing challenging things in wild and beautiful places is quite impressive. Actually, it's a feeling that I think many of us will recognise. You've had a challenging day. Maybe it's your first time walking up a hill ever, and you've done Scarfell Pike or something like that. And it's been hard during the day, but you get down and you think, well, that was tough. I'm never doing it again. But as in the days that follow, you can feel a certain pride in yourself. And I don't know I don't think it's sort of flattering the ego particularly, but I think that it does help you recognize that you're capable of cool things, and that does give confidence.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I find that very admirable, because you have the awareness there, and I think I mean, we talk about it a lot here at Wild, that so many people are sort of just going through their lives, and it's sluggish and it's heavy, and they're not sure why. They're just not feeling full or joyful or light. And that is what being out in nature can offer people. And for you, it just so happens to be running. For me, it's more hiking. For others, it's cycling, or whatever it might be, depending on how people can access the natural world. But say, as we sort of begin to move on with the conversation towards your professional work, say somebody's listening to this wherever they are in the world, and perhaps they've been inspired to change their hiking boots to running shoes, and they want to just up their pace a little bit, whether it's high or low. What sort of tips or advice would you suggest to somebody who perhaps wants to go out for their first run of this year?
Well, I'd say going for the trails is a better option than going for the roads, for various reasons. One, it's generally physically a little bit more gentle on your body. The first time that I ever ran 50 kilometers in distance, I had no idea how it was going to go. I did it on the South Downs Way, running between Brighton and Eastbourne, and almost the whole time off road and on the trails. And I was amazed at the end of it how my legs weren't ruined, whereas 50 kilometers on the road would have been probably agonizing for weeks afterwards. I'm guessing. So yeah, getting off road is a great idea, and so when you're encountering hills, I think don't be afraid to walk up them. That's fine. That's all part of how it goes with fell and trail and mountain ultra running. And I guess going somewhere that inspires you from the area. So whether it's trees that you're into, or whether it's coastlines and beaches that you're into, or open moorland and mountains, having a crack at that.
I like that a lot, actually. Go where you are already inspired by. Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah. All right. So let's take a slight shift here into Cicerone then. So I am sure many of our listeners have already had their hands, or like me, perhaps have a shelf or two filled with Cicerone guidebooks. But for those who perhaps are not familiar with Cicerone and what you guys do, would you mind sort of giving us a run through about what you offer the big wide world?
In short, we make guidebooks for walkers and for trekkers and for mountaineers and cyclists, and a few for some climbers as well, to destinations that are in the UK, Europe, and dotted around the rest of the world. We've got somewhere around 360 books. So it might be a book that covers a specific area. So walking in Cornwall or a certain part of the Lake District, or it might be for a long distance trail, such as the West Highland Way or the Coast to Coast, or maybe a trail in the Alps, like the Tour of Mont Blanc, or in the US, like the John Muir Trail, and then sometimes books for larger areas with a few things mixed in. So trekking in Tajikistan or the Everest region, sort of big exciting things like that.
So really, you have books for almost everywhere. I mean, I'm sure it's a growing, obviously it's a growing area that you're covering, but there's something for everybody there. And I can again say that from experience. And also I did have a bit of fun yesterday. I very much got lost on your website, just like, oh, I could go here and do this and do that. But saying that, I'm somebody who naturally loves the outdoors, so it's not very hard for me to get excited. But what are the sort of goals and aims of Cicerone as a company? In terms of, when you reach your audience, what are you looking to do there?
Well, we're really looking to inspire people to go off either on their own, or it might be that they want to go with a leader or a sort of more of an organized company. To give people the information that they need. And hopefully the inspiration through the various books that we've got, and articles and podcasts and all this sort of stuff to give people the ideas to go off and either try new things, try a new area, or just sort of keep going back to the same area. Whether it's, I don't know, whether you live in Newcastle and want to go walking in Northumberland, then continually ticking off the routes in that book. That's probably most of our purpose, really.
No, I think that's incredible. And is that sort of why Cicerone was started as a company to begin with?
So yeah, Cicerone started, I guess it'd be 51 years ago now, by a couple of friends and their other halves. So this was 1969, and they seemed to be dissatisfied with the guidebooks that were on offer at that time. I think maybe the books back then were sort of had their heritage and legacy from the 1930s and 40s, and that sort of that kind of writing about mountain and outdoor spaces. So they thought that they could do better, so they just started a publishing company.
As you do.
And they're kind of as you do, yeah. But like you would these days, it was a they started at home, started out of Walt Unsworth's house, and gradually expanded from there. But the first books were things like there was a climbing guide to rock climbing in the Lake District. There was winter climbs in Ben Nevis and Glencoe. Another quite early one was a guide to Romsdal in Norway, by an author called Tony Howard. Tony's actually still an author for us. Is one of these amazing people that looks and behaves far younger than his years actually are. Tony then went on to basically establish adventure tourism in Jordan. And Jordan's an amazingly beautiful country, and I think we know it pretty well for areas like Wadi Rum. For those people that aren't sort of aware of that, if you've seen films like The Martian, where Matt Damon gets stuck on Mars, that was filmed in Wadi Rum. There's always this sort of idea of like a legacy for authors as well. Those were the origins of Cicerone, and the idea that it should be books and guides for walkers and climbers by walkers and climbers.
I there's something so special, isn't there, about holding a book? In the time where we've got Kindle and Audible and all of these other ways in which, apps and everything, and I use all of them. But I'm still, hands down, biggest fan of a book and a map and a compass, that hard material that you are solely responsible for interpreting and using yourself. But using a guidebook is one thing, writing them is another. Could you sort of talk us through the process of what it takes to become an author of a guidebook?
Yeah, absolutely. But before I tell you about the author process, I just want to say, just pick off on something that you mentioned about the excitement of holding a book. We get to see it as publishers from, I guess, a kind of a unique perspective. So when the quote unquote raw materials of a book are sent to us with a Word document and a pile of photos, GPX files and maps and drawn topos, and then we get to sort of translate that into something that looks a bit like a book. And then the most exciting moment is when the advanced copies from the printers get to us, where you can. This is the finished book. It's always an exciting moment. But then to come back to what does it take to be an author? Well, I think it's quite hard to be an author. I think much of my responsibility within Cicerone is working on the new projects and identifying and working with new authors to bring their and our ideas to fruition. So the skills, I think, that the breadth of the skills that are required to be a guidebook author, a really good one, I think are quite hard to attain. Writing's obviously one. Being able to write a route description that doesn't sound horrendously boring, but at the same time isn't excessively verbose. And of course, making sure that the accuracy of that description's there. But then there's photographic ability. And that often doesn't actually have to mean that you need to be an incredibly, I don't know, gifted or talented photographer. It generally means that you need to work to get photos. So waking up at a good time in the morning so that you can catch the light at its best. Going out at the right time of the year to get optimal light. Identifying the best spot to set your camera up, and then maybe cycling past it 20 times until you get it just right. So yeah, hard work and skill rather than necessarily creative talent, I think, from the photography side. And then there's more technical aspects, so creating and editing GPX files. Not especially difficult, but of course you need to be savvy enough with that sort of thing. Organizational ability to take all these various components together. Determination to be able to work on a single book project for what might be several years in the making. And then I'd maybe add a sort of attention to detail, so that you're being incredibly accurate with the description and all of your writing, what's marked on maps, exactly where a label is positioned on an elevation profile, making sure that in the text, if you say that there's a hotel, a grocery store, and a bakery in a little village in France, that those things are marked exactly the same on the map and exactly the same on the profile. Like, I don't know. I think it must be very difficult.
Yeah, there's a huge amount that goes into it, and I think that's why I wanted to ask that question, because I don't know about you. Well, perhaps not, because you have the knowledge of what it takes to write a guidebook, but you go along on a walk and it's like, oh, this is a nice walk. Maybe I should write a guidebook on this. Come and do it in spring, summer, autumn, winter, and write a guidebook. And then it's like, oh, that's a big job. Maybe I'll just carry on with the filmmaking.
Yeah, I think it well, because of those things that are required. It's not for everybody, and it does take a lot of time, and I imagine it can be very frustrating as well. So, if particularly for an author that's working on a book that to an area where there's a very limited season in Norway, for example, only a couple of months, and it might rain half the time in the summer when it's not actually got snow on the ground. So you need to go back again next year and rewalk everything that you did that first time. And then maybe go back again because you forgot to get such and such a picture, or you weren't exactly sure about where your GPS device was recording. I think that sort of tenacity and ability to hang on for a long time
kind of makes the hike or the adventure seem like the easy bit, really. Putting together a book about it is the additional step.
I think so. I'll just note Jonathan and Leslie Williams, who are the directors and owners of Cicerone, who've taken on a bit of guidebook writing and updating themselves. They wrote a book for walking in Zermatt and Saas-Fee. So sort of under the Matterhorn and the great high peaks in the Swiss Alps, and they were there for they set up shop there for, I can't remember how long it was, weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, walking and rewalking all of these routes. And it's very fair to say it was not a holiday for them. Lots of hard work, and I think even when you're out on the trail, it's not a question of enjoying the walk and then getting home and writing it up afterwards. I think there's constant notes that need to be taken. How long did it take to get between that junction and that cafe? Damn, I forgot how long it took. I need to go back and rewalk it, or maybe later in the evening go back and check your watch to identify how long it took. But yeah, it doesn't sound like a restful experience.
Yeah, it's wow, like huge respect therefore. You touched on something there, actually. You mentioned the word updating, and I think that's the thing with modern technology, is it's very easy to go, oh, this shop is now closed, delete. How does that work in the world of guidebooks, where sort of once you've got a hard copy, it's not like a Harry Potter map where it's constantly automatically updating?
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool, actually.
It would be cool. Hey?
Maybe that is the future. The way it works practically now is that that authors always, of course, keep their ears to the ground and are aware of changes that are going on. We really welcome people that. Customers that spot things that are wrong with books, and we love it when you can tell us that things aren't quite right. What we do there is we make a note of it so that we can correct it when the book's going to be reprinted, or when we do a new edition, which hopefully isn't more than a year or a couple of years or so. But crucially, we always put all of these things on the website. So if you've got the Cicerone book for walking in Lancashire, if anything has changed within that book that we're at all aware of, then it will be on the Walking in Lancashire book page on the website in the update section. And there's a facility where you can sign up for updates. So if anything does change, then we'll just send you an email to update you on that. But the magic Harry Potter map that constantly updates is surely a part of the future, but it's probably not a magic map. It's your phone. So that's definitely going to be a big part of what we can offer in the future.
I love that. That's good, and it's good to know where people can go to just check everything's up to date. Do you personally have a guidebook that is a favorite, a much loved, much creased, much weather-worn guidebook that you keep very close to your heart?
Yeah, that's a cool question. There's let me think. There's a few from the Cicerone stable. There's new books on Scrambling in the Lake District by a brilliant local author called John Fleetwood. And this is a pair of books, one for the Northern Lakes, one for the South. Scrambling, if people aren't aware of it, is I guess very easy climbing or hard walking, sort of something that falls somewhere in between. You generally don't need a rope, but for the hardest scrambles, it's often a good idea. But John created a book that instead of just sort of identifying where all of these often very short, like sort of 30-meter or 80-meter long bits of rock to scramble up are across the Lake District. Instead of just of identifying those things, he brought it all together and presented days out. So it might be park in Langdale and walk up to Stickle Tarn and do Jack's Rake, and then wander over to Harrison Stickle and do this scramble, and come down by another scramble, because it's not too, it's only grade 1, so that might make sense, and making a day of it. That's got that book's getting, well, we only published it earlier this year, but there's more and more folded down corners of that book and scuffs around the edges. I mean, in terms of non-Cicerone guidebooks, I've got it's quite a cherished one. I don't know, it's not well worn at all, but it is certainly cherished. It's a French guidebook for climbing, rock climbing in the Hogar mountain range. I wouldn't expect anyone to really know where the Hogar is, but it's in southern Algeria, right in the middle of the Sahara Desert. And it just seems like the coolest place to go climbing and go for an adventure. For years, I've dreamt that it'd be great to go there. But yeah, I definitely am a fan of guidebooks. But there's a few Cicerone authors I know that are quite, maybe take that to another level, and they sort of collect historical guides, particularly to regions that they're most interested in, where they might want to sort of track how information on walking or trekking or cycling in that area developed over the decades. So yeah, there's a lot of people out there cool. that are quite passionate about books and guidebooks.
Yeah, well, I like that a lot, actually. It seems like a very cool thing to collect. You know, I collect the guidebooks. You know, they are my souvenirs from the trails and the adventures that I've been on, kind of like you. And the beauty of them is, you know, particularly the ones that are based around a region, is you can pick them up and have a flick through if you're just looking for some inspiration. And as you say, everything starts to get quite dogged, and then you're like, oh, my week's holiday in the Lake District is now not long enough. Definitely got to come back. And it's really nice to have that forward thinking, because again, it sort of just keeps us engaged and inspired with life. But you know, it's funny actually, because one of the guidebooks I had no idea that you guys had is a book on polar exploration. How did that come about?
I'm afraid there's a bit of a sad story around it, or around the end of it. But the author, Dixie Danscourt, is obviously writing a book about polar exploration, a true legend of adventures in the Arctic and Antarctic. And very sadly, Dixie died a couple of months ago, actually, in a crevasse fall. I forget it. I think it was in the Arctic rather than the Antarctic. So yeah, but I mean, this is obviously very sad, but it's, I suppose, also an occasional reality that we are faced with when we do go to these kind of places and into wild areas and into the mountains, is that things can go wrong. And sadly they can spell the end of a life, and that you know, it's not the first time that sort of thing has happened before to a Cicerone author, and thankfully it's very very occasional that it's in the line of research. Yeah, I must admit though that polar exploration hasn't been a top seller.
Why?
Yeah, quite specialist stuff, but it's very I don't know, I think it's very cool to sort of read this kind of really nitty gritty specialist information in a book in your hands.
Yeah. No, I flagged that one particularly because I'm very fascinated by polar exploration, and it's something I'm looking to take steps into very soon. So I think I'll be placing an order once we're finished here. So
Sounds good.
that's it. So to begin to sort of wrap this up, I'd love to just take a moment to sort of dive into where you guys are heading. You know, you've hit that big 50 as a business, as an organization, 51 now years in the making. Where are you heading? And do you feel in this era of the advancement of technology in people's day-to-day life that there will continue to be space for guidebooks and paper copies of information?
Yeah, since the first ebooks that we published, which would have been well over 10 years ago now, we've not really seen the proportion of ebook sales to printed book sales actually change all that much. It's not like ebooks have taken over the world, but I guess, you know, it doesn't take too much to think about why that is. A lot of the time, actually having a book that you can rely on in a place where you might not be able to charge your phone is pretty important. Of course, ebooks are pretty terrible as reference books if you need to flick backwards and forwards, and that's something that a guidebook can definitely give you. But yeah, the future is undoubtedly going to be more digital offerings, and showing these great routes that we sort of curated, and that I suppose that there's something I sometimes hear, which is that if a route, whether it's just a day walk or a big long 3-week cycle ride, has got a Cicerone book to it, then it sort of represents a certain standard and a certain quality. You're going to have a good trip, and a good, let's face it, a good hard-earned holiday time, to be out there on it. So that's going to be part of our mission, is to be able to get those things into people's hands in better ways, on phones and on other devices.
Okay, no,
so that's sort of one part of it.
Yeah.
And then another side is introducing more people to Cicerone and to walking, and to hiking, and through more accessible books. I think a lot of the time that we've got quite a lot of routes that are pretty tough. Let's be fair, and not everybody wants to walk the Cape Wrath Trail in northern Scotland over featureless terrain where you need to navigate and you have to camp and carry days worth of food on your back. It's not everybody's cup of tea. So broadening our offering to welcome more people into things they can do outside.
And obviously you've got the podcast, which is up and running. You have is it blog with the articles and things that are going out? What other ways can people tune into what you guys are up to?
Probably every way that you can imagine, I'd expect. So getting the newsletter, and that'll show you every new article that we publish. It'll also keep people up to date on every new book that we've got going on. On the website, of course, you can read about every book that we publish, but there's always a few articles whether it's sort of a trip report or an introduction to the area, or just something with a bit more depth to give you a bit of an idea if that's kind of the thing for you, on the website. And then on the podcast and the live events that we're doing, bringing on Cicerone authors and other prominent people in the outdoors to continue getting us inspired.
No, that's exciting. I have recently, obviously with our conversation since we met in the Lake District, been following along with all sorts of things you guys are doing, and I'm like, oh, I could have a full diary just Cicerone fanning.
Yeah, I think it'd be pretty time consuming. If anyone's able to read all well over 1,000 articles about different beautiful mountain areas, then yeah, I'm very keen on hearing anybody that's completed Cicerone Extra.
Game on. Well, actually, I should have asked this earlier, but it's just sprung to mind, and I really have no idea what the answer will be. But you know, we're here in Wild, we're big believers, and we're really trying to encourage environmental stewardship for people who are active in the outdoors. And I wondered whether there's anything that you guys do within Cicerone, or even Joe on a personal level, to sort of work to promote, encourage environmental conservation. Is there any kind of way that you print that is perhaps environmentally sensitive? Do you have like a recycling or a system in which people can return old guidebooks and get the new up-to-date one, and then you figure out what to do with them? Is there anything going on there that you guys are looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very much at the forefront of our minds as well. So we work with Lancaster University actually on a range of projects, so that they can help us in being at the forefront of what we can do from a sustainability perspective. So obviously from a start, everything that we print is on FSC certified paper. So that's a good start. Probably a good one to mention is the New for Old scheme, where if you've got a guidebook to maybe an old edition of a book, and you spot that there's a more recent version, then you can have that one, that more recent one, for half price.
Okay.
And we can take the book back and get that recycled. There was a big change actually that we made last year, which many people will have seen Cicerone books with a plastic cover protecting them. So we thought very carefully about this and debated for hours, really, on the merits and demerits of keeping PVC sleeves. PVC's one of the worst plastic materials that there is in terms of its potential environmental damage, because it I suppose we don't actually know what happens to PVC, but there's it's projected that in 1,000 years it doesn't just sort of disappear, it just granulates, and that's about it. So terrible stuff. So we've been doing we've completely ceased all publishing with PVC sleeves. So we do still offer a few PVC sleeves that we have sort of hanging around that we'd had originally for people to buy if they want to sort of get one for a few of their books and slip it in and out and make it a bit more of a multi-use and reusable kind of material. But we found that by folding the front cover and the back cover to make a bit of a flap, it adds quite a bit more durability to the book. It's not as good as the plastic, but it's pretty good. But we are constantly on the outlook, and again, I've worked with environmental science students at the university to try to establish what the right material is going to be to make a protective cover for guidebooks, because there are some things that sound theoretically great, but maybe they melt at a temperature that would be possibly seen if your book's cooking in the top of your rucksack pocket, or if you left it on a rock in Morocco. So we want something that's actually going to last. So that's a continual effort to try to keep finding things there.
No, it's really wonderful to hear though that you have got that vision to, well, you are taking the steps, and you're looking forwards about how you can continue to offer functional, practical guidebooks, but that are slightly more environmentally sensitive. So thank you for sharing that and breaking that down, and actually thank you for sharing everything you shared about yourself personally and your adventures and within Cicerone and what you guys are doing. So to finish this thing off then, as I mentioned before we hit record, I have 10 quick fire questions, which I will ask every guest who features on the podcast. And if you are ready, we will kick it off with question number 1.
Yeah, sounds cool.
All right, let's give it a go. So first question is, what was the last book that you read and loved?
I just read... wasn't the author, but it's called the Wool trilogy. I don't know if anyone's come across this. So there's Wool, Shift, and Dust. So it's a novel, or three novels about. It's a sort of a dystopian kind of thing where the sort of a post-apocalyptic situation where everyone lives in silos underneath the ground, and they have done so for hundreds of years. Anyway, that's that. I was so absorbed by the first book that I got to the end and immediately ordered the second volume, and did the same with the third volume, and didn't read anything else other than just those things for a couple of weeks straight.
Definitely shows that it's a book that you enjoy, or a series that you enjoy.
So that wasn't really a quick fire answer, but
it's all right. We'll take it. Thank you. Question number 2. This one will definitely be quicker. Is, are you a morning or an evening person?
I think it's probably fair to say that I'm a morning person. Yeah.
Yeah. What sort of time do you get up normally?
We get up at 5:30.
Okay.
Which, if I'd told that to my, teenage and 20-year-old self, that would have been pretty horrifying. But it's good to sort of get the run in at the start of the day, and do a bit of studying as I tend to do in the morning before work as well. And then by 9 o'clock you've achieved quite a lot.
To go, love it. No, that's really cool actually. Question number 3 might be a little bit interesting. If you were reincarnated as an ice cream flavor, what flavor would you be?
It's probably a classic mint chocolate chip, I'd think, but it's a tricky question because I guess if you're reincarnated, then you're getting eaten, and that maybe I need to be something like banana that would be off-putting to be eaten.
That is an amazing answer. I love how like the variety of answers with this. Some people are like, oh yeah, straight away vanilla chocolate is my favorite, and you're like, well, I don't want to be eaten, so banana. That is good.
Yeah.
Question number 4 is, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
I think it's fair to say I wanted to be a rock musician.
Okay.
I think the probably one of the first, child drawings that I was able to put together was probably somebody playing a guitar and somebody singing. Yeah, that was probably the childhood dream.
I like that. Cool. Next question. What is your most unusual talent?
I guess it's probably that I can touch my nose with my tongue.
You can? Can we see that? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Hey, love it. That's a good talent. Good party trick. Yeah,
it's quite easy. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. There's probably some weirder things, but I'll leave it at that.
We all have them, but I like that one a lot. That's brilliant. Cool. Okay, who has inspired you the most in your life?
Ooh, that is a really hard one. Um, I think I'd maybe speak more to a bit more more generally, probably rather than singling people out. But I'm always incredibly inspired by sports and by not necessarily just sort of elite sports, but anybody sort of participating in anything. I don't know. I just find it incredibly inspiring always. One thing that I'd recommend anyone try to do is to, whether you're a runner or not, is try and get yourself to a 100-mile long ultramarathon finish line and watch people finishing, particularly those that might be finishing further towards the back of the pack. It is an amazing experience to watch people that have been out for like 20, 30, 40 whatever hours finally cross the finish line and stop. It's just remarkably inspiring.
Yeah, geez, I have goosebumps just listening to that. Actually, I can almost feel the energy that would be there. That's yeah. I am officially going to do that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, next question. When you're 80 years old, what do you think will matter to you most in your life?
Ooh. I think at that time, I think that it will be important to me to still be having adventures, whatever that might mean. And I think, we always need to readjust our, I guess readjust our assessment of what adventure means to us and what is right at that kind of time. And I think even I do that now. When you've got an injury that takes you away from running, then it doesn't mean that running should always be your adventure. It could be something on the bike, or it could even be going for a short walk, provided it still sort of fulfills some of those feelings of adventure. So I think hopefully still getting out and doing some adventures, whatever that might be.
I like that. We say here at Wild that adventure is a mindset. Obviously for everybody it looks very different, and it's how you approach something. So no, I think I can definitely relate to that. Switching the energy up.
It's very personal.
Yeah, it's very personal. Absolutely. Okay, so the next two questions are a little bit shorter. So let's see how we go with these. What is your favorite food?
It's probably burgers.
Yeah,
it's probably burger. We're mostly vegetarian these days, but I cannot resist like a really good burger, and I get very passionate about it actually, and very, very opinionated. And it's always you're setting yourself up for disappointment if they don't ask you how you'd like it cooked, because that means it's going to be overcooked, and it's incredibly disappointing. Well, it's clearly what I'm most very, very passionate about burgers.
Well, simply because I see the passion, I would like to add a bonus question. Do you have a particular burger, like when and where you had your best burger? Is that there in your mind?
Yeah, it's there's no doubt in my mind at all. It's there's a burger joint in Hamburg in northern Germany that it's called the Bird. So big shout out to the Bird, and it's the blue cheeseburger, but it's not like a strong Stilton. It's more of like it's a bit runny, and it gets all over your hands, and it's incredibly messy. But I haven't had that for years. But that is the burger to go for.
Special place in your heart. Love it. That's great. All right. So penultimate question: do you have a favorite outdoor space?
Outdoor space.
Yeah, somewhere you like to go and enjoy.
Yeah, I think I'd put that as think I might take the liberty to translate to my favorite mountain, and place that I'm always drawn to, and I suppose wish I was on, and that would be Great Gable in the Lake District. I think it's a great hill, and there's a lot of ways that you can go up it. A few of them are particularly straightforward, and there's quite rocky and scrambly in a few ways. But it also, to me, represents coming towards the end of the Bob Graham round, which is the famous fell running challenge in the Lake District. And by the time you've climbed the Great Gable on that 100-kilometer long route, you can see the finish. You're nearly there. You're probably going to do it. So there's kind of an emotional connotation there.
Jeez, that's special. Yeah, very special. Okay, so the final question is, do you have any catchphrases or mantras that you live your life by?
I don't actually. There's there's not necessarily things to that I particular phrases that I live my life by, but I do think that I do try to concentrate on things that I can control, and then things that are and then identify what is genuinely out of my control, and just accept whatever that is. So I don't know. I try and sort of differentiate between those two things, and always look ahead to see what I do have some kind of influence on.
I think that speaks to great wisdom, actually.
That's generous of you.
Well, listen, Joe, it's been so lovely to have this time and chat with you. Thank you for making the space for us to have this conversation today. Is there any final words or thoughts that you'd like to sort of leave the listeners with today as we draw this to a close?
No, I've had a great time talking. It's been a very nice way to spend a Wednesday morning. I hope that people have got some inspiration to check out a new area or try a new activity, because I do think that being involved in lots of various different mountain or outdoor activities or sports, I think is a really nice thing. So if the weather's too bad to go for a climb, then go for a walk. If you don't feel like cycling that day, then go for a run, and just sort of opening up more ideas to everybody. That's the path to happiness in the hills, I think.
What a brilliant note to end on. Thank you, Joe. You take care, and we'll speak again soon. Thanks so much for tuning into today's episode, guys. I hope you found that as exciting and encouraging as I did. If you'd like to find out more about Cicerone or purchase one of their guides, head to cicerone.co.uk and you'll see their vast array of books from all around the world for hiking, cycling and other activities as well. Thanks so much to Joe for his time for this episode, and if you're interested in joining a community to help you get outside and meet like-minded individuals, then please head to patreon.com/spend more time in the wild, where you can join our online community and get stuck in with all that we've got going on. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you next time. Stay wild.